اوكي يلا بسم الله. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Okay, before we're gonna start the thing, we're gonna make dua for Palestine. Everybody did the referendum, right? Right? Okay. We're gonna make small dua for Palestine. Hopefully, we're gonna keep doing it every single beginning of class, and then we're gonna start. Okay. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وصل على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين وصل على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت إنك تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك. اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في غزة. اللهم انصرهم على عدوهم. اللهم انصرهم على عدوهم. اللهم كن لهم ولا تكن عليهم. فارحم حيهم وميتهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم اغفر وارحم شهداءهم. اللهم اغفر وارحم لشهدائهم. اللهم اغفر لهم وارحمهم وعافهم واعف عنهم وأكرم نزلهم وأوسع مدخلهم واغسلهم بالماء والثلج والبرد ونقهم من الذنوب والخطايا كما ينقى الثوب الأبيض من الدنس. اللهم عليك بأعدائك وأعدائنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم عليك بأعدائك يا رب العالمين. اللهم مزقهم كل ممزق. اللهم زلزل الأرض من تحت أقدامهم. اللهم ألق الرعب في قلوبهم. اللهم ألق الرعب في قلوبهم. اللهم ألق الرعب في قلوبهم. اللهم انصرنا عليهم يا رب العالمين. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu salamu ala Sayyidina Rasulullah. Okay, this class, inshallah, is going to be a basic introduction into what is Tajweed. Yeah. So it's going to be basic introduction into what is Tajweed. Okay. We're going to explain what is Tajweed, and inshallah, next class, we're going to completely get into it. There's a lot of information still in the basic introduction. So I want everybody to be with me, inshallah. Okay. So what is Tajweed? Okay. So scholars before wanted to encapsulate how can we preserve the pronunciation of the Quran. So my main point here, as a scholar looking at Tajweed, is how to preserve the phonetics, the ada. How do you actually recite the Quran? Okay. Now I don't. Now I have an oral tradition. So I have a tradition that preserves from a sheikh to a student and so on and so forth. But somehow as well, the Muslim ummah has been known to change things into sciences. Right? When we want to preserve something, when we want to keep something that is necessary for a religion, it generally changes into a science. At the beginning, it's very intuitive, it's very known, you learn it by just being with your teacher, and then later in life, it becomes a full-fledged science with structure and ways of learning. The reason they did that is to preserve the phonetics of the language. Okay, now, I am a person right now trying to preserve the Quran. What do I start? How do I start doing this? Well, like anything, any science, we break things down. So we break things down into. It's not coming up. Okay, it's coming. Okay, so we break things down. We break things down into letters. Okay, I have a letter mixed with another letter. I pronounce correctly. I finish the whole Quran. Right? That's the whole point. I have a couple of letters. I know how to join them properly. Well, I now know how to say a word. I know how to say a word. I combine it with other words. I know how to say a sentence. I know how to say a sentence and ayah. I know how to read the whole Quran. So the most important units that I'm actually studying, and I'm actually mostly studying in Tajweed, is actually the letter, right? So the most important part is the letter. Now, after I learn how to actually understand the letter in isolation, I'm going to learn how to actually combine the letter. And I'm going to tell you that this small intuition that everybody understands is actually the definition of tajweed. So the whole lecture is me explaining a couple of things and then showing you how did the scholars define tajweed, and I'm going to show you that this is literally the definition with obviously more things added to it. But literally the definition of tajweed is I'm going to look at the letter alone, understand the letter, explain it scientifically somehow. Then I'm going to look at the letter when it's combined. After I know the letter when it's combined, then I have the full science down. Because again, I have a letter, I know how to combine letters. What is left? What is left in tajweed? Like what is left in the Quran if I know how to say a single letter? And I know what happens when that single letter combines with that other letter. If any changes happen.
You get words.
Well, words is the combination of letters as well. So you can actually, that makes sense because you can say, well, how do I combine words? How do the pauses work? That also can be part of it. The what? Accents? Well, if I explain, Alexa, if I explain how to say the letter properly, there shouldn't be accents. Accent is generally, yes, everybody has his own voice, but accents actually is generally a mistaken pronunciation. Like most people who have accents, when I tell them to fix a certain way, to push their tongue in a certain way, they actually fix their accent, right? So like an example of that is alif, right? Alhamdulillah, lillah, right? Alhamdulillah, walillah. They actually do something with their tongue. It's not something in their voice. It's not something in the vocal cords, how thick the vocal cords are. No. It's actually a movement of the muscles, right? Obviously, some people are heavier in tone. Some people are like that. But I'm saying in general, accents are actually a mistake in the letter. So if I actually explain the letter properly, there shouldn't be any accents per se. He should actually speak like an Arab. That's the whole point. And that's what I'm actually trying to get to. I'm trying to explain the letter enough for the letter to be unique and for the letter to be preserved, right? So again, I have the letter alone, then the letter combined. Actually, my sheikh, the way he actually estimates the proficiency of the students is he actually looks at the student. He would have a sheet, and the sheet would be a, u, e, a, u, a, e, and then he would go to every single letter. This is Hamza. The first letter is Hamza. He will check the letter in Fatha, check the letter in Kasra, check the letter in Dhamma, then check the letter in Sukoon. And then after that, he will check the student just reciting in combination. So he will have a sheet to explain the letter in isolation. Is he saying the letter in isolation properly? Then he will actually estimate the proficiency when he's combining the letters. Okay, so that's the main idea of tajweed in general. Okay. Okay. It's coming. It's coming. It's not coming. It's taking a while actually. Okay. It's gonna come. Okay. So now how did our mashayikh, how did our scholars actually explain the letter on its own? Now, how does the letter actually come about? When the letter comes about with our physical, right, instruments, right? We have lips, we have the tongue, we have the throat. We have physical instruments. These physical instruments, when they move in a certain way, why is it not changing?
Tapped it against it, went back.
Oh, you tap on it. Okay. So when these physical instruments, when they move in a certain way, or when they hit, they actually cause the letter. These physical instruments we call place of articulation. Example, ba, right? Ba, what do you have? Lips. So, ab, 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 ab. So the place of articulation. So if I want to describe the ba, I would say it's a letter that comes from the lips. Okay? But Hazim is going to say, yeah, it comes from the lips, but there's something about the hitting. There's something, because meme as well, if you look at the meme, I'll say it's also a letter that comes from the lips. So it's not a unique definition, it's not a unique description of the letter I'm pronouncing. Here comes the properties. you can think of the place of articulation as the main crux that holds the letter, and property is something that's just salt and pepper added to it, right? So one of the properties of the ba is that it does not have any air that flows with it, right? So ab, that's one of the properties, for example. Okay. What's the actually the place of articulation between the ba and the meme is different. So actually that's a bad example. So let's actually use a better example. Let's actually use the example of ذال and ثاء. خلاص؟ ذال is the tip of the tongue with the incisors. So I'm going to have the tip of the tongue. We're going to explain, obviously, it's going to be a lesson with the incisors. That is exactly the same, right? So now I have the place of articulation. I'm describing the dhal and the tha, and when I look at it from the place of articulation side, when I'm looking at it from the like physical, instruments that I use to actually pronounce the word, I have the same description. Okay? Then I have something called properties. What's the property difference between dhal and tha? Okay? So if you put your hand here, right here, okay, and say adh, adh, right? Okay? So put your hand here and say adh. Okay? Now say ath, ath. What's the difference? Huh? Has more vibration. Okay? Does everybody agree? Dhal. What's the difference between said dhal and tha? He said vibration, right? Vibration. Exactly. This vibration is actually an entailment or actually a sign of one of the attributes, or one of the properties. This property is called hams and jahr. Hams is when the letter is whispered and a lot of air comes out. Ath, ath. Dhal, which is jahr, is when not a lot of air comes out and the letter is very loud. Adh, adh, ath, ath, adh, adh, ath, ath. Okay? So this is actually a property, and one sign to actually know if you're doing it properly or not is the vocal cords. So actually now I have two letters that have exactly the same place of articulation, but the difference comes from the properties. Alas? Okay. So does that make sense? So how do I scientifically describe a letter uniquely? I'm trying to uniquely describe the letter to the point that if someone it works with what I'm describing, he will get the letter properly. I'll tell him, put your tongue in that area. He put his tongue in that area. And then I'll tell him, do jahr. Obviously, he has to understand what to do. But if he actually understands what to do, he will say, adh, adh. Because just put your tongue in the place of articulation and literally vibrate your vocal cords. You got it? And that's the letter of dhal. So that's actually what I'm trying to reach there. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, what is a letter? A letter is a sound. Generally, we think of a letter, we think of the symbol. Letter is a sound. Sound that comes from a place of articulation. Specific, approximate, we'll talk about them later. Alas? So a letter is a sound that comes from place of articulation. Is a sound. Alas? Okay. Now, we're going to hit you with a big thing right there. Okay. This is Tajweed. This whole thing is everything in Tajweed. Right? Everything Tajweed. Okay? So, obviously, we can add a couple of things under essential properties, but let's leave it there. Okay, so we talked about the place of articulation, easy. We talked about properties, right? Now, I'm gonna skip this guy because it's too technical, but I'm gonna explain it quickly, okay? Idea is, I'm gonna explain quickly, but I'm gonna skip it for now. I'll explain it later. But you have essential properties and non-essential properties. What is an essential property? It's a property of the letter. Something that if you remove, the letter stops existing. One example of that we just did. For example, in dhal, if you stop vibrating your vocal cords, will the dhal exist? Right? So the dhal will stop existing if I stop the vibration. So this means that the property is not like something I'm just using to describe. It's actually part of what the letter actually is. Anything that's part of what the letter actually is, we call it essential property. So again, in the dhal case, right? If I remove the vibration, I remove the letter stops existing. Same thing with the tha. Let's use another example to not be bored with the same example, but it's the same idea, by the way. It's the same property that differentiates with sin and zay. Okay, what's the difference between sin and zay? It's exactly the difference between dhal and tha. Okay, put your hand here, okay, and say s, s, s. Okay, now say z, z. What's the difference? What's the difference? The vibration as well. Again, the vibration is a sign of a property. Again, imagine the zay without that vibration. Will the zay exist? It will not exist. So again, some properties are essential. When we say essential, we don't mean like it's it has to come about. No, it's part of what it is. An essential thing, it's part of what a thing actually is. Without the vibration, the letter does not exist. Then we have non-essential properties. Again, we're going to skip that guy because it gets weird. What do you mean unchanging? It gets weird. Let's look at transient properties. And what do you say attributes? Properties. Transient properties will actually prove to you that the whole tajweed is right there. What is transient properties? Transient properties technically means any property that comes and leaves, like it's not part of the letter. Well, what properties comes and leaves? Well, mad, right? إخفاء, من قبل. When we do mad, right? Alif, la. Every time we say lam, do we say la? No, we don't do that. Like every time we use the alif, do we say la? No.
As in, what is mad?
Right. Mad is the elongation of some letters, right? Mad is gonna be a section of tajweed. But basically, the idea is the letter alif. When we say qala, qala, that's just alif, right? Alif is the part when we say qala, right? Qala, right? It's not part of the alif to say qal. It's not part of the alif. It's actually some situation, specific situation, that made me say that the alif is elongated this long. So, transit properties is everything else you learned about tajweed. Everything else you learned about tajweed is here. It's not here. Actually, the most important parts of tajweed is here. Because if you get the place of articulation properly and you get the properties properly, and you actually recite the Quran with no, okay, we're gonna put caveats in this sentence, but if you recite the Quran with no tajweed per se, but you're actually mentioning every letter properly, I think a lot of the scholars would say, again with many asterisks, right? But I think a lot of scholars would say your salah is valid, right? Because your salah is invalid with lahn al-jali, right? If I'm correct, right? So if you actually know how to say letters properly and you don't make mistakes in letters and you know how to do the fatha kasra dhamma, all of tajweed where min qabl man kana yurid, all of these things are here, are non-essential changing properties. Okay? Does that make sense? So just again, I have place of articulation, which is the physical instruments I use to get the letter. Right? Meme. Okay. Then I have properties. Properties is that added information that I need other than the physical instrument to actually get the letter fully in. Like the difference between dhal and tha and the difference between sin and zay. Right? Some of it. If I remove that property, the letter stops existing and it becomes another letter. If I see, I'll do it right now. I'll do zay and I'll vibrate and then I'll stop vibrating in the middle. Okay? As I'll do it again. As because the zay and sin is actually the same makhraj. It's the same place. Because most people don't believe that the zay and the sin is actually in the same place. Because most people don't have good nerves in that area. So they don't feel actually where's their tongue actually placed. But I'll do it again. I will do zay and then I will just stop the vibration. As so the letter actually completely goes away. Does that make sense? Any questions with that?
Is that a cat or a cat?
That
By the way, I don't know if you mentioned this, but if anyone has any questions in the class or anything, feel free to
Yeah.
ask them.
Interject. Yeah.
I've done that many times.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Habib. Okay. Very good. So some properties does not leave the letter, and some properties change. When does this actually happen? When letters combine. Right? When letters combine. If the letter is on its own, I'll just say the letter with all its essential adding. Why am I adding a transit? Like, what am I doing? Right? Okay. Does that make sense? Any issue? Any question? Make sense? Okay. The non-essential, I can actually explain it, but to be honest, just gonna be more confusing than it. When it actually comes, when we actually explain properties, um, it's very clear. Basically, anything that is an entailment of that is that. If you didn't understand what I said, doesn't matter. I'm not gonna go more into that. Anything that's entailment of an essential property is just a non-essential. That's why it's unchanging, because it's always an entailment of the essential property. Who cares? Okay. Okay. Actually, before we go there, how do scholars actually figure out? And I should have had the slide there, but I completely forgot. How do actually scholars figure out the place of articulation? Again, what is the place of articulation? The instruments I'm using to actually gain the letter. خلاص? How do scholars actually get that? Okay? So what did one of the older scholars do? All he did, first of all, he knows how to pronounce the letters. That's a big assumption, right? He's an Arab, he knows how to pronounce the letter. Then he actually, what he used to do is, I don't know if that's exactly his method, but that's the idea, is that he would put alif before, and then he would put the letter with a sukun. Okay? And then stop. And then check where his tongue is actually, where is his tongue? So it'd say, up, up, up. And then he would check his tongue, he was like, up. And then he would check his tongue, and he's like, okay, that's the tip of the tongue, the area, the tip of the tongue. And then he'll say, up, up. And then he's going to say, oh, it's near the incisors. Right? He will keep looking, and he's like, okay, is that the gums of the incisors, or is that the gums, or is that on the incisors? And he will just try to explain it as much as possible. Okay? So let's try to do one. Qaf. First of all, there's assumption that you know how to say qaf. Okay? Then actually, so I want everyone to say qaf and say up, 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 and try to figure out and try to describe to me as much as you can where the qaf is. Up. No, you know the. You're just gonna tell me the definition. You're lying to me. Okay, up, up. Okay. Somebody wants to try? Sit down. You already know, right? Oh, you never did it? طب يلا, give it a shot. Give it a shot. Qaf. No, ta is good. Very good. Right? You did so this is mashallah this alone. Mashallah. Right? So right. So now let's do kaf. Ek. 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 Now, any shots with that? Very good. Very good. uh, شوف ألف وأختها غين وحروف مدها ثم لأدنى الحق همز الهاء أقصى لساني. So he says, actually the writer of the poem, he says um, غين وخاؤها وقاف أقصى لساني فوق ثم الكاف. So he says the qaf is the very back of the tongue and then in front of it is the kaf. So he actually explained it exactly how you explained the qaf and the kaf in the poem. Right? There's a poem of the Jazariya. We're going to talk about it in class. Okay? So actually, in the poem, he actually he actually explained it the way you explained it. خلاص? So this is actually okay. Now there is a big assumption that we made in the beginning. What is the big assumption? Is that you already know how to say the letter. Okay, I don't know how to say the letter. So what do? You actually look at the description I give you with the pictures, and then look and then do it yourself. Do the method yourself, and then check where you are and check where you're supposed to be. Does that make sense? Check where you are and check where you're supposed to be. So that's how you actually should fix yourself. I'm going to tell you the description of where the letter is. You're going to try. You're going to try to do this. You're going to say where's your tongue going, wherever it's going, and then you should try to bring it back to where it's supposed to be. Huh? You can do it with hat, but you have to like feel your throat properly. So hat, yeah. See, do, and you will feel actually a muscle, and do it strongly to feel the muscle. Because again, a lot of areas in your mouth and tongue actually have weak nerves. So sometimes it's very difficult to feel where you are. Like where am I at? Like I don't know where I'm at. So you keep putting your like you like you don't know where you're at because you don't have the nerves are very weak, right? So your nerves are very weak. So actually sometimes do it very strong. So the to wake up those nerves to know where you are. خلاص? خلاص? Make sense? There's a lot of info that I'm giving you so much info, but everybody's with me? خلاص. We can we already talked about that one. So we talked about thought. So I'm just saying here, thought has a couple of, I'm just explaining some couple of essential attributes. We already talked about an essential attribute that makes sense. Generally, these attributes, you would have to feel them. So let's actually do the elevation one. Elevation is generally hard for people to feel, but we'll give it a shot, okay? So what is elevation? Elevation basically is the back of the tongue going up. That's what elevation. Again, a lot of the side information, just throw it after you leave. We're gonna explain it in depth. It's literally the back of the tongue actually going up. So try it. Say you find that the back of the tongue goes up. Now, some people don't feel the back of the tongue. So what are you supposed to do? Say and just push it, exaggerate it a little bit to the point that right? Push the back of the tongue, right? Till the very end. You should have enough muscle power that you should actually close your tongue. Right? If you're comfortable enough with the thought and your muscles there, you're going to be very comfortable. Say, because I'm pushing my back of tongue quickly up and then I'm putting it down with the lam. So I'm saying, right? So if you're comfortable with your muscles, you're going to be able to do it. Okay, let's just review what we just said quickly. You have a method of how to get the letter, right? I will give you a description, right? You're supposed to map the description with what you're feeling. So I'm having a description, and then what you're feeling. And somehow you have to make them like each other, right? Now, there's a couple things, if you map properly, you will be very good at this science, right? If you map the sound with the feeling, with the description, So some people are very proficient tajweed. They can close their eyes and they can say, "Yo, you didn't put your back of tongue going up." They can close their eyes and say, "You didn't give the dhamma. You didn't give it like when you do dhamma, you're supposed to do like you supposed to circle your lips." He will close his eyes and he will hear the dhamma and he will know that you didn't circle your lips. Why? Because he mapped the sound with the description with the feeling. So he will actually feel that you didn't do it, right? Because he knows what it sounds like when you do ku ku. Some guys say ku ku, right? He will actually feel if you didn't push your back of the tongue up, say talut talut. He will actually know what the sound that should come out when the tongue is lowered. Does that make sense? So map the sound with the feeling with the description. This is one of the most important things in the whole thing, right? Okay, because what am I going to do in the next classes? I'm going to tell you this letter is there, that letter is there, this letter is there. You can memorize it and leave. But are you doing it? Well, doing it requires muscles, requires training, requires mapping, feeling it. So this actually is one of the most important parts. I should have had it on a separate slide, but alhamdulillah. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So we talked about this guy, we talked about this guy, right? Transit attributes, right? Because the noon is coming with the qaf, we say min qabl. The noon does not. The noon normally is min. Why you say min? Why is that min? Well, that min is because I'm coming after the qaf. So transit attribute is not part of what the letter is. Okay. 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 Let's okay. I will recite 2 recitations and tell me which one you actually think is actually better or not. Okay? So just raise your hand, number 1, raise your hand, number 2. Okay? I'll recite. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Number 1. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Number 2. Obviously, I'm trying to make them as good as possible, so it's difficult. Do I recite again? One more? Okay. Louder. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Number 1. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Number 2. Okay? Okay. One more time. Okay. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Number 1. Number 2. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Number 2. Okay? Now, number 1, who says number 1 is better? Okay? Who says number 2 is better? Okay. Now, who said number 1 is better? Why? Because you can have an intuition, but دعوة الأم. Yes, always. Best explanation. لا طبعا. نظر. Say it again. Very good. He got it first try. That's not good. So the harakat, the vowels, was much more pronounced. Okay. Yeah. What? Okay. خلاص. Okay. Who said number 2 and why do you think number 2? Because actually maybe there's actually a good reason for it. So who said number 2 and why? No. You said number 2? Yeah. Okay. Why? You like the tone better. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because, I'll tell you why you like the tone better, but that's actually right. I'll tell you why. But who said number 2 and why? Very good. Very good. So the transitions were smoother. Okay. Yeah. You raise your hand. Okay. 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 So I'll answer the first 2 first. Well, the reason why people maybe like the second one is because it's the normal Saudi qira, right? Generally, how that's the Saudi qira. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman. That's the normal. So people, if they like that tone, they use it better. But it's not correct, more correct. It's not correct actually. But that's another issue. Now the flow part is actually a good point. And I'm actually going to mention the flow part actually later. So I can say it's okay. That's actually a good mistake. That if you actually believe that the flow of the second one is better, that's a mistake on my part. I should have made the first one flow as smooth as well. But that's actually really good because we're going to talk about flow. Okay, so what was the lesson here? Fatha, kasra, dhamma, harakat, vowels. Question. Question. Okay, I talked about the letter and so on. Okay, I talked about the letter and so on. How do letters actually combine? Okay, in languages, I don't know if it's all languages, but in languages, you use the fatha kasra dhamma. That's wrong. Okay, but fatha kasra dhamma. Why is this like this? Anyway, supposed to be dhamma, fatha, and kasra. Okay. In languages, what is this? Okay. So, in languages, you actually use vowels to connect letters. In Arabic, you cannot, with caveats, you cannot find two sukoons after each other with caveats because you can. But yani, but I'm pretty sure you you can you cannot find three sukoons for sure. For sure, you cannot find three. You can find two, yani, because life. Okay. And actually, there's a section of Tajweed where we say, okay, where we talk about what happens when we have two sukoons. Anyway, how do letters combine? With harakat. Okay? In English, what is the longest consonant sequence? In English, it's three. I checked it out. If it's wrong, please somebody tell me I'm wrong. Spill, yeah. Splash. So it's actually the longest consonant sequence you find in the English language. Look at any book, you always find the E or the I. That's why in Hangman you put the A, E, I, O, U first, right? Because it's always there. Why is it always there? Because the largest consonant sequence you can find is the three. خلاص? Why? Because imagine you try to do splish, splish, splish. You add some kasra there. You're lying. You're cheating. Like you add some small kasra there. Splish, splish, right? So so basically, you need the vowels to actually combine the letters. خلاص? In Arabic, what do we have? We have fatha, kasra, dhamma. Now I want to show you something really amazing here. Okay? Dhamma, kasra, fatha. What is this? I can't see. Show me. It's the longer sequence. A Y is a kind of a vowel. Because Y is kind of an I. But I don't know how to spell it. Yeah. Because the Y is a kind of a vowel, but yeah. It's cheating. Anyway, so if you look at this, A is a fatha, EI is a kasra, or use a dhamma. So we actually have the same vowels as English, kind of thing. Yeah? So you actually have the same vowels, right? Okay. Now, let's actually explain how do I actually say fatha, kasra, dhamma. Because here's the thing, again, I'm saying a lot of stuff, but the main important thing the whole class is letter on its own, letter combined. Letter on its own, letter combined. That's it, nothing else, right? We talked about so many things, feeling and combine and map. No, letter on its own, letter combined. Okay. Now when I'm trying to combine letters, okay, when I'm trying to combine letters, I need those guys. So what do I do? خلاص? Okay. There's no hamza here. That's wrong. Okay. So alif is the daughter of fatha is the daughter of alif. Kasra is the daughter of ya. Dhamma is the daughter of wow. What do I mean daughter of? When you say dhamma, you actually say wow, but shorter. Say qul. Qul. Qul, right? Now, elongate the qu, right? Ooh, right? So, when you say qul, all you're doing is actually saying dhamma but quickly. Wow, but quickly. And that's why actually now we have a good test here. If people say the haraka wrong, elongate it. So some people say Alhamdulillah. Okay, again, let's actually come back to the mistake we did. Okay, we say Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Is this right or wrong? Hazan, يعني, it doesn't feel bad. يعني. Hazan. يعني والله it feels good. يعني. Alhamdulillah. Okay, elongate the dal. Okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna say Alhamdulillah. I'm gonna elongate the dal and see how bad it sounds. Okay, Alhamdu. Alhamdu. That's what actually is said. Again, Alhamdulillah. Dulil, dulil, do, do. Now, Hamdulil, lil, lil, le. When you say lil, it's not, it should be lil. Because when you say lil, when I elongate it, what do I say? Li. Right? But if I say lil, it's going to be le. So the fatha is the daughter of alif. The dhamma is the daughter of the ya. Kasra is the daughter of ya. The dhamma is the daughter of wow. Does that make sense? Yeah. Make sense? Okay. Now, how do I recite a letter with a vowel? I literally remove the letter from its makhraj, so the place of articulation of the letter. So I have dhal, dhal. I go to the makhraj of dhal, and then go to the makhraj of alif, or go to the makhraj of dhamma. Immediately after. After is a really bad word, because you don't say dhu. You actually say dhu. So you can say exactly with. Okay? Say, I put my tongue in the dhal spot, and then dhu. Dhu. I leave the makhraj and the dhamma comes out. Dhu. 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 The. 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 Does that make sense? So I actually do the makhraj of the letter, and then I do the makhraj of the alif, waw, or ya. That's all I'm doing. And that's why the first letters actually no. Never mind that. Okay? Last thing, you have 15 minutes. Last thing is flow. Okay, now I'll recite. Obviously, this one you can know which one is better because it's going to be horrible. Okay, but I'm going to recite. Okay. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Number one. Number two. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Tick, 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 tick. You know, it's not flowing. It's like Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Right? Should be Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. You're smoothing out the edges between the letters, right? And you're going through it. I have huge problems with flow, right? When I try to my sheikh, he's like, the kaf is like begging you, like, you know, why? Because I'm trying to get the letter properly. I'm trying to say ek, and I say k, and the hams comes out, and everything is proper. But then the whole world gets destroyed after it, right? Like so you have to have flow. You have to make the letter clarion sound. The fatha should be clear. The dhamma should be clear. High quality, everything. And that's why, Kareem, when I actually added some more emphasis on the fatha kasra dhamma, you felt that my flow was not great. And that's a mistake on my part, right? So when you're combining letters, we're worried about three things: the properties, the fatha kasra dhamma, the flow. We're done. I'm just going to be a review. Does that make sense? I have a letter on its own, a letter with some guys. Letter on its own, I'm looking at where am I going to say it? How am I going to say it? Properties, something we talked about, weird thing that somehow is necessary. Who cares? But the most important thing is the place of articulation, the instrument of the physical instruments. Then I have letters together. Letters together, when they combine, sometimes they do weird things. These weird things, we call them transient properties. They mean elongation. Some weird thing happens when we combine letters. So that's number one. Number two, I have to do harakat properly, because without harakat, I cannot actually combine letters. Right? Number three, flow, smooth, no pretentiousness. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil no pretentiousness. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Right? I said Mali. I didn't say Male. Because some people, because of the flow, they say Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa the fatha kasra dhamma is like, when you stop each fatha, if you stop each fatha kasra dhamma, it's going to say la, le, lu, everything is going to be weird. It's not going to be actual fatha kasra dhamma. So flow, but do not lose the fatha kasra dhamma. Do not lose the letter. Right? Some people, to the point of flow, they eat up some letters. They don't actually pronounce it properly. Right? No, every letter, I want to hear it. I wanted to, be very clear. صراط اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب الميم is not, he doesn't even want to say the meme. He's so lazy. He's like غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. The ghain, where's the ghain? غير المغضوب عليهم does not exist. So do not sacrifice the flow with the quality of the letters. Okay. We finished. This is just some fancy thing that I'm putting at the end to make everybody feel happy that we did something. So what is the fancy thing that we did today? This is the famous Al-Jazariya poem. It's the beginning a poem for Tajweed, right? How does he define Tajweed? He defines Tajweed exactly like how we do. He said, وَهُوَ إِعْطَاءُ الْحُرُوفِ حَقَّهَا, giving the letters its essential properties. مِنْ كُلِّ صِفَةٍ وَمُسْتَحَقَّهَا. Mustahaqqa, non-essential properties. Either unchanging and transient. But we didn't talk about that. Who cares about that? وَرَدُّ كُلِّ وَاحِدٍ لِأَصْلِهِ. Place of articulation. That's his definition of tajweed. وَهُوَ إِعْطَاءُ الْحُرُوفِ حَقَّهَا, giving the letters its essential attributes. مِنْ كُلِّ صِفَةٍ وَمُسْتَحَقَّهَا, giving the letter its transit attributes. وَرَدُّ كُلِّ وَاحِدٍ لِأَصْلِهِ, the instruments in the physical instruments. That's the actual definition. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, we'll do the quickest review possible, okay? Just really quick. Okay? What is tajweed? Letter alone, letter combined. Letter alone, physical instruments, something we call properties. This weird thing is the whole of tajweed. Because you can see it a lot. I'll show it to you every time to remember it, right? Essential attributes, transient attributes, it happens when we combine letters, right? Which one is better? Which one was better? One guy said flow, one guy said the fatha kasra dhamma. Fatha kasra dhamma, things combine, right? We need to combine letters because fatha kasra dhamma, without vowels, we cannot combine letters somehow. Some weird thing that human beings have. Fatha kasra dhamma, if I don't know if my fatha is right or wrong, elongate it. You'll hear the worst thing in the world. It's like really bad, right? Okay. Right? Like actually pause your favorite sheikh and see if he does the fatha. He says le, then you're like, okay, that's pretty good. Anyway, letter combined, we recite the letter from its place for articulation with the letter. Dhu, bu, mu, immediately, right? So we do we leave the place of articulation, we leave it, mu, and at the same time do the makhraj of the fat alif waw or ya. Flow, no pretentiousness, and we're done. Okay? Any questions, inshallah? Does that make sense? Very good. Bad. Any questions? Anything? Okay. So inshallah, the slides.
I'll mention it.
Okay.
Done?
خلاص الحمد لله.